about bread. I mean, one of the words in Arabic for bread is
it's like a negotiation, political negotiation.
You finished it? No. If the foundation means.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the small and humble reception before and had the chance to network between yourselves. So I think it's time to start now, 10 minutes late, but hopefully we'll make it on time, according to the schedule. Ladies and gentlemen, very good night. Thanks a lot. It's a great pleasure to have you all here tonight. To this public lecture event organized by Al-Furqan in collaboration with the Foundation for Science, Technology and Civilization. Very great honor to have many of professors, members of the trustees of the FSTC, who just before this event had their MHAG meeting and just finished an hour ago and made it for the reception. It's a great pleasure to have you all here on this first event after a pause of a few years maybe. As you know, the lectures of Al-Furqan has been a tradition before. You saw in the wall many posters of previous lectures. Almost 30 lectures took place here in London and almost the same number outside UK. And hopefully this will be the establishing event tonight to continue with the same tempo, hopefully in the near future. And I hope we'll have you again in such events. Tonight we have got a few distinguished speakers until 6:30, until the main keynote speaker, Professor Déroche, takes his floor here. Just before I start, obviously I'm going to present each of the speakers on the given time. Just few technical issues. I'm not very good in directions, but just to call your attention, possibly the mobile phones, switch them off or turn them into silent mode. There are two fire exits. God forbid, just in an emergency, it's the main corridor on your left and the end of this corridor on the right. And the restrooms are also at the end of this corridor on the right-hand side. Distinguished guests, Al-Furqan Islamic Heritage Foundation was established initially with the aim to document and preserve the Islamic written heritage, principally through its work in surveying, imaging, cataloging, editing, studying, and publishing Islamic manuscripts. But by the time passing, its scope of activity expanded, and it has become now an umbrella organization, as you can see from that huge banner and maybe the lectures outside, consisting of three centers really. The first one, the main name really for what Al-Furqan initially was established in 1988 was the Manuscript Center, which was established in 1988 legally, but really factually started the work in 1989. That deals with studying the Islamic written heritage, even though it is called Islamic heritage, but really it includes all the science, because I was asked from someone before, do you include the sciences and geography, and really it's all a matter for concern. And this center is based in London. The second center is the Maqasid Center. We call it the Maqasid Center, or the Center for the Philosophy of the Islamic Law. It's a center established within Al-Furqan in the year 2005. And also this center is based here in London. And the third center is the Mawsu'a Center. We call it Mawsu'a Center, or the Center of the Encyclopedia, which is really the encyclopedia of Mecca and Medina, the two holy cities. It's a center based, it's an Al-Furqan branch, but based in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. It's a semi-detached or semi-independent center, but again under the logo of Al-Furqan. Many people ask usually what really is the connection between those three centers. Actually, when I came, I joined Al-Furqan a year and some months ago, and I was surprised as well to see what is the connecting point between these three centers. And really, I realized that there's a huge in common between them, which shows really the wise and the wisdom of the people who established this great foundation, and on head of them His Excellency the Chairman Ahmed Zaki Yamani. if you see really, I mean, realistically, the Manuscript Center deals with the Islamic written heritage, then the Maqasid Center is really that driving force, if you want to say, for those people who produce this huge amount of civilization called the Islamic heritage throughout almost 1,000 years. We'll have the chance, hopefully, later on to hear about the 1,000-year amnesia in the Islamic history. And the Mawsu'a Center, or the Center for the Encyclopedia of Mecca and Medina, really shows the huge, important role that the two holy cities played really in the Islamic history, because it was really those two holy cities were the ultimate place where those scholars, if they never had the chance to meet anywhere else, they would meet really in those two holy cities, at least during the time of Hajj. So they exchanged, there has been a huge amount of exchange of ideas and benefiting from each other and transferring and transmitting knowledge between each other. So that's really just shortly about the connection between those three centers. I think the best person to talk about the background of Al-Furqan and the main stations really through which Al-Furqan has been passing throughout this more than 2 decades now. Hopefully next year we're going to celebrate the 25th Jubilee anniversary of Al-Furqan. I'm delighted actually to invite Mr. Sheikh Yamani, which is the member of Al-Furqan Board of Directors, to give us a short brief on Al-Furqan, but entitled Al-Furqan from the World Survey to the online database of the Islamic manuscripts, emphasizing the main activities and achievements of Al-Furqan during this time, but with a special concern on the manuscript side, since the whole event tonight is dedicated really to the Islamic manuscript. So, very warm welcome. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sally. I would like to say on behalf of Al-Furqan Islamic Heritage Foundation, the Board of Directors and its Chairman, Sheikh Ahmed Zaki Yamani, and on behalf of the Foundation's member of management and staff, I am delighted to welcome you all to this event, to this public lecture, which we hope it will be one of many, many more public lectures that we have here in this office. It is somewhat of an inauguration for us, and we're happy to have you all here. As Sally mentioned, it's a tradition. We had many, many lectures, as the walls will tell you, and the walls don't lie. 30 public lectures, you say. I mean, I haven't counted, but it feels, only yesterday I was very much younger when I attended some of the lectures, and I find myself speaking on the podium right now, so it's a bit of a big event for me. We are honored to have with us Professor François Déroche to talk to us today about the Islamic Manuscript Studies for the 21st century. Professor Déroche is a long-standing loyal member of our Board of Experts, and really we thank him for honoring us with his presence today, and very much look forward to your lecture. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of a man who is a mentor to many, many people, including myself, and a campaigner to enrich us with the beauty of a golden age that really gave us so much. Professor Salim Al-Hassani, thank you for your continued support and guidance. I hope your foundation has enjoyed the premises today, and we look forward to many more cultural and social interactions in the future. And if you can please allow me to take this opportunity, as Sally said, to really highlight the efforts made by the foundations really with regards to the Islamic manuscripts. For 24 years, the Al-Furqan Islamic Heritage Foundation has been blessed with the generosity of its donor, but really with the commitment of its family of scholars and specialists who worked hard to identify, initiate, assist, sponsor, promote research in the field of Islamic culture, and more notably Islamic manuscripts. Now in 1989, roughly speaking, the foundation set up an ambitious research project to investigate and comprehensively as possible, look at all the collections of Islamic manuscripts all over the world. It was one of the first projects for the foundation, and scholars were identified and commissioned to carry out a survey in almost 106 countries all over the world. This resulted in publishing the World Survey of Islamic Manuscripts in 4 volumes, which is until this day the most wide-ranging survey and guide, both in terms of countries covered and languages covered. And with the grace of God, thankfully, we did not stop there. From day one, the foundation was committed to enhancing the understanding with the preservation of Islamic manuscripts through surveying, imaging, cataloging, editing, and publishing these manuscripts. One of the main obstacles the foundation faced in the early days was to try to allocate or locate a number of catalogers to work on each project. It was a problem. And as my father always reminded me that cataloging is a dying art. So from the start, the foundation endeavored to organize training sessions with local libraries to let them engage with the community and try to revive this art of cataloging. And to date, the foundation has organized 11 sessions in 7 countries and graduating over 380 candidates. These countries include the United Kingdom, Egypt, Turkey, Morocco, Malaysia, Jordan, and Syria. We hope to continue this in the near future with the courses held in Egypt and hopefully in Iran sometime this year. The foundation also focused, as I mentioned, on cataloging different collections of manuscripts, mainly in areas that are risky and deprived from the funding and support many other libraries do have. To name but a few, in the early 90s, the foundation has worked closely with Hudrev Bey Library in Sarajevo to produce the catalog of Arabic, Turkish, Persian, Bosnian manuscripts published in 17 volumes with a total of around 10,000 manuscripts recorded. More recently, we worked on cataloging the Hagia Sophia collection in the Süleymaniye Library in Istanbul. It's currently being edited, and we hope and we expect to publish 16 volumes with a total of around 8,000 manuscripts recorded. The Dar al-Kutub cataloging project in Cairo. The first part is already published, and it's 4 volumes recording around 5,000 manuscripts. And the second part is expected to be published in 8 volumes, recording around 8,000 manuscripts. All in all, the foundation was able to publish so far 30 catalogs in 68 volumes, recording approximately 65,000 manuscripts. Now, along with what has been mentioned, these include a range of libraries and private collections in Jerusalem, Mali, India, Niger, Senegal, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Albania, Algeria, Ghana, Yemen, Iraq, and amongst other places, Saudi Arabia. We have other upcoming cataloging projects that we're working on. The third part of the Dar al-Kutub project in Cairo, which has just started and expected to be published in 25 volumes and hopefully recording 25,000 manuscripts. And also, as I also alluded to, the Iran cataloging project, which is expected to start soon, working with 2 different libraries and hopefully recording something like 13,000 manuscripts. Now, our dream is to migrate these volumes and hopefully, including the World Survey, to from where it is right now, a hard copy book, to a digital database, in an open, accessible online format, searchable and freely available to the world. We are not far from that dream, as we hope to launch our online database sometime early next year. Now, We are extremely proud of the journey the Foundation has taken. Although my allocated time is probably over, but there's no end to the work we can be doing to serve our beautiful culture. So the journey continues, and it is with that spirit that I welcome you again to this lecture, praying to have this opportunity for many more events in the future. Thank you very much.
A huge thank to Mr. Sheikh Yamani for joining us tonight, actually, and for this thorough and very insightful and very precise, quick journey throughout the Al-Furqan. Huge, really, achievements. I mean, obviously he didn't have time to go through the Maqasid Center achievements, which are huge again, and the Mawsu'a Center. I would just maybe recall the Mawsu'a Center, which is the encyclopedia project. When it started in 1994, it was a dream actually, which came true now. No one thought that it's going to see the light, but really we are looking forward in the near future to publish the 6th volume of the Encyclopedia of Mecca and Medina. It started as a project foreseeing that it's going to reach around 16 volumes, but really, hopefully, I don't want to play with numbers from now, but we are hopefully going to reach around 30 volumes of the encyclopedia. So that's a huge project, huge amount of work and huge amount of commitment of many committed scholars. I wouldn't go further than that, just to thank again Mr. Sheikh for joining us, and I would like to use this opportunity tonight on your behalf, on my behalf, to congratulate him for becoming a father a few days ago, and I think he definitely had a tough time, but luckily it is that he found a bit of time to join us tonight, so thanks a lot. Our next speaker is Mr. Peter Fell. He's the Director of Regional and Economic Affairs, University of Manchester, but also he's the Vice President for Strategic Affairs for FSTC. Peter is going to talk tonight about a topic we entitled it. It's a very short time, but I hope he will do it within those few minutes given to him. The FSTC, the Foundation for Science, Technology and Civilization, and 1,000 Years Amnesia. So looking forward to that. Just a short brief again, FSTC is well known for its flagship book, 1001 Inventions, and also for its blockbuster exhibition, 1001 Inventions, Muslim Heritage in Our World. I hope many of you have heard or maybe had the chance to visit it. Before Peter starts, actually, I was told before, FSTC, since this event is jointly organized by Al-Furqan and FSTC, and hopefully it will be a ground for future cooperation, I think it's time for Mr. Peter Fell to give a book of 1001 Inventions to Mr. Sheikh Yamani. That was the plan.
It was the intention. I was going to give it to you after I'd said my few words. But I will give it to you now, and we're delighted on behalf of FSTC. It is signed by the Editor-in-Chief, Professor Al-Hassani. And I also, if I may, give a copy to yourself. I believe you were speaking later on. And if I can give you a copy as well. And I'm sure you can read it after rather than before.
So Peter Fell, 1001 Years, FSTC and 1000 Years Amnesia. So, please.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a very elegant journalistic introduction. I'll only speak for a few minutes, but I'm delighted to be able to do so tonight. On behalf of FSTC, I'm one of the trustees, and our eminent chairman, Professor Al-Ghamati, would have liked to have been here, but unfortunately has been unable to. But we are joined critically by Professor Al-Hassani, who's sitting here at the front, who is immediate past president, remains a trustee, is the founder, is the what I would call the great inspirer, if I may use that term, not only for FSTC itself, but I believe for a whole host of organisations and partner organisations associated with the extraordinary heritage that comes out of the 1,000-year period of history that we will refer to as Muslim civilization. FSTC, I would suggest, is a unique organisation. It's firstly non-political and non-religious. Secondly, it focuses on the past, but is explicit about creating a better future, a more coherent future, a future of people's working together. And in some ways it's interesting that what we're seeking to do in terms of our mission is so beautifully put in terms of the writing at the bottom of the Al-Furqan Foundation, in terms of a glorious past and a brighter future. And I think that is very reflective of what we're both trying to do. FSTC also focuses not exclusively but significantly on science, and we suggest has created a new place where there can be a unique dialogue in terms of organisations and cultures and people coming together. That science creates in many ways a unique space, a safe space where people can have discussions and dialogue. We also seek to engage with the public, absolutely explicitly, although this isn't without challenges, as I think many of you will realise. But our intention is to engage with as many people as possible. And I need to say this is both within Muslim cultures, Muslim civilizations, but also within non-Muslim cultures and non-Muslim civilizations, because we suggest that it is a shared heritage that very few of us know about because of the 1,000-year amnesia, but nonetheless it is through understanding this critical period of our past that we can appreciate where we are now, and we can perhaps shape a better future. We also use the phrase Muslim heritage explicitly and deliberately, but we emphasise this is around place and around time, rather than necessarily being around faith and around language. And I think those are quite interesting concepts in how we try and position the work that we're doing. It isn't that faith and language aren't important, it's just that we try and focus on that specific glorious period of our historical past in a certain geography of the world. We seek to be inclusive, and therefore we work across the academic community, but we also want to engage with organisations that are rooted in science engagement, are rooted in the history of science, in Muslim culture also, and in civilization. And that is frankly why I'm so delighted to be here today working with you collectively, because I do actually believe that we have in many ways a shared interest and shared agendas. I think that both of our organisations have a shared interest in the history of the Muslim world. I believe we are both passionately committed to the power of scholarship and peer-reviewed research. We both have a shared engagement in wider engagement, which is what today is clearly around. Perhaps, if I can describe it, I think Al-Furqan digs out wonderful diamonds in the manuscripts. I think what FSTC tries to do is to polish those diamonds and to get them to a much wider market. But the critical bit is getting the diamonds in the first place. And it's only with those diamonds that organisations such as FSTC and the scholars that we engage with can actually take it to the next stage in terms of engaging with the people of the world on a much wider basis. We've been very active as an organisation, and very generously the 1001 book has just been described, and also the exhibition. The book is now in its third volume. We've just concluded the deal with the National Geographic, who are now, so it is a National Geographic publication and distributed through their enormous global reach. The exhibition has been here in London at the Science Museum, in Istanbul, in New York, in Los Angeles, and is now starting to move across the Arab world and the wider Muslim world as well. And we're also trying to develop new and exciting opportunities in terms of signing memorandum of understanding with Turkish, at the moment, cultural and academic organisations, but also much more widely again within the Muslim world. And we are also seeking to re-engage in terms of curriculum enhancement and teacher training, because we believe so crucially that it isn't just a case of having the manuscripts, interpreting those manuscripts, the scholarship associated with those, but it's putting that into the wider public, and quite crucially, the way in which young people engage with this agenda is going to be all of our futures. So I'm delighted to be here today. I have to say, on a personal basis, I trained as an industrial historian, so I'm interested in machines, and I'm interested in the glory of 19th century England and what English industrial culture gave to the world. And it's only been in very recent years, through the tutorship and scholarship of Professor Al-Sani, that I've become enthralled and challenged and simply want to know more about this crucial period of our history. And it's just through understanding this that I can now understand so much clearer the contribution that, for example, the Industrial Revolution itself has given to the world as well. So I think we live in the shared culture. I think all meetings like today are critical in terms of understanding shared scholarship, shared understanding, and I think, as always, the more that we can work together, is a better future, so much the better. So thank you very much indeed for allowing me to say a few words today, and I'm sure the lecture will go extremely well. On a personal basis, I'm afraid I hope this isn't seen as too disrespectful. I'm going to have to slip away. Without boring you to death, I live in Liverpool, I need to be in Newcastle at 9:30 tomorrow morning, and the only way I can get there is by catching a 5:30 train from Manchester Airport. So despite Muslim civilization, despite the Industrial Revolution, it still takes 5 hours to get from Liverpool to Newcastle. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks a lot, Peter, for this quick and very informative, actually, speech. We've reached the moment now, just to say bye to Peter. Thanks a lot for attending today. We've reached now the moment which you were waiting. Actually, you were tonight's event actually was announced for. Is the keynote speaker, Professor Déroche, and his lecture on Islamic Manuscript Studies for the 21st century. I would like to start with a very short brief about his biography, but first of all, it has been a very good luck for us actually to get hold of Professor Déroche. We heard that he lives on a plane, so we were lucky to catch him actually and to bring him here. And thanks a lot for finding the time and coming tonight. Great honor for us and for the whole audience. And giving a short description, actually whatever I say I wouldn't give justice really. Just to mention that if the professor actually excuses me in my very much ignorance in French, but I never knew a word in French except the aujourd'hui. That's why I heard from the news sometimes. Professor Déroche is Director of Studies at the École Pratique in France, Paris, and a member of the Scientific Board of the Max van Berchem Foundation in Geneva, Vice President of the International Committee of the International Congress of Turkish Art, Vice President of the Société d'Études de Maghreb Préhistorique Antique et Médiéval. I know that it doesn't sound very much, but joint editor of the Islamic collection at the Presses Universitaires de France, Professor of Paleography and Codicology, which is his main area really. His written books are tens, his edited books are tens. It would be very long time to go through all of them. I would really just mention one of his iconic books, which is the Codicology and Introduction to the Study of Manuscripts in Arabic Script, which is a book you'll find it after the lecture outside. Maybe you could get hold of it and maybe signed also by the author himself. Very great honor to have him tonight, and also I shall not forget the fact that we are honored that Professor Déroche is part of the Manuscript Center, Al-Furqan Manuscript Center's Board of Experts. Very welcome in London, and thanks for your time, and looking forward to your very interesting lecture. Professor Déroche.
Thank you so much. I'm almost ashamed to stand now after what you have said about myself. Well, I'm the more impressed that I remember vividly, not so long ago, the first day I came in contact with an Arabic manuscript in the Bibliothèque Nationale. It was almost by chance. It changed my life actually, but well, I would never have thought at that moment that I would one day stand in front of such a distinguished audience, knowing so much about manuscript, to speak about the 21st century and manuscripts, Islamic manuscripts for that period. I will use a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm sorry, I'm not very good at electronic things, so I will need some help to start it. Well, I will take this moment as an opportunity to thank the Foundation for inviting me for this presentation. The title may sound a little bit pretentious, to chart the way for Islamic studies manuscript for 1 century is a little bit thick. But, well, it's just a way of offering a few remarks on how things could look in the future. While I was preparing my lecture, I actually came to do what many of us do now. It was to type on Google Islamic manuscripts, just to have a look, and it was a look. I got in a fraction of a second, 7 million to 600, and I don't know how many results. Of course, it doesn't mean anything. Well, it means something that Islamic manuscripts are a subject which is becoming important on the internet, and it mirrors, I think, the awareness which grew over the years about the manuscript. They are important, they are part of human heritage. It has been said previously about science. It's really something which is raising a broad interest and in various circles. We are fortunate today, of course, to have a far better access to this heritage as a consequence of the awareness which is now common in various circles, but also for all the work which was accomplished during the last decades on in this field. We are now benefiting from conditions which didn't exist when I started working on Islamic manuscript, and I think that time is ripe for describing new avenues for research in the 21st century. I said figures are not important, and I shall contradict myself, going again to figures, those which would suggest the extent of this field of studies. The late introduction of printing press into the Islamic world explains frequently suggested figures of 3 million manuscripts in Arabic. Until the 19th century, manuscripts were the book par excellence. The chronological distribution, of course, is vast. We have many manuscripts from the 19th century, and very few manuscripts of the, let's say, 7th and 8th centuries. It was the common form of book, and everybody was familiar with manuscripts in the Islamic world. And as in other cultures where the printed book prevailed over the book written by hand, it took some time before people started to understand that the transfer from the manuscript to the printed book didn't mean that the manuscript ceased to be of importance. They were different from the printed book, and this should be stressed. And the effort of preservation, of course, is paramount for further studies. And it shouldn't be limited to the oldest manuscripts. Of course, we all think immediately that the oldest are the best and the most interesting, but actually, and I hope to show that, current trends in research do not mean that we should discard, for example, the 19th century manuscript. There will be someday some study on these manuscripts, although they might today seem without any importance because there are many copies of this and text. So it's a matter of understanding that the future may change our perception of parts of this heritage. Conversely, we should be careful to know more precisely the dimensions of this heritage. Recently, the awareness of the importance of this number of manuscripts gave rise in some circles to an overestimation of its size and to the wildest speculation. I give 2 examples taken on the internet precisely. According to a website, Sind Archives, there would be 2 million manuscripts in Pakistan. In Timbuktu, as you can see on the screen, there would be 1 million manuscripts and 5 million in Western Africa. But, of course, we should get more precise information, and actually, according to a well-informed source, who has been working with libraries in Timbuktu, the total number of manuscripts in that city would be between 75 and 80,000 manuscripts. So you see that the discrepancy may in some cases be enormous, and we should work, and the survey of Islamic manuscript was an important step towards this direction, to know exactly the size and the importance of this heritage. Although many public or private libraries have already gathered a large collection of manuscripts, a huge number remains in private hands. This situation raises, of course, the issue of the preservation and the digitization of manuscripts, which is a way of getting access to these, but unfortunately, well, I cannot go into this matter today. Well, this brings us now to the question, what is a manuscript? A simple question, but of course, as always, the simple questions are important because they tend to make us think about what we are speaking. The word means written by hand. And this document, a marriage contract from North Africa, from the Middle Ages, is a manuscript, but it's not a manuscript. What interests me is something very plain. A book in the shape of a codex. Of course, the traditional Islamic manuscript will look differently. It's a codex, but sometimes it may also be looking like a roll or an accordion, next one. But these are more exceptional than the normal presentation of the material. The interest for manuscript is nothing new. Manuscripts have been the common form of books, as I said, during centuries. We know from literary sources, but also from the notes found on the manuscripts themselves, how scholars or book lovers strove to get manuscripts which were relevant for their own purposes. Efforts were made to preserve them, be it by notes like those which are found in the corners of this opening page, codicology, in order to to ward off pests, or by the constitution of collections which would keep the manuscripts safely out of danger. In the West also, the quest for Islamic manuscripts started as early as the Middle Ages, when people started to translate into Latin Arabic texts on sciences or philosophy, as well as the Quran. The texts transmitted have been during centuries at the core of the interest for Islamic manuscript. As a part of Islamic transmission ran along the traditional lines of teaching, and many copies bear witness of this process on their opening or final pages. The edition in printed form of the text, known in manuscript form, has benefited from the methods of philology and eidetic. This effort is still considerable today and takes the lion's share in Islamic manuscript studies. However, in spite of a long tradition of text editing, the work may in some cases look like the Danaid's jar. An edition based on the known manuscripts of the work will have to be revised if a better copy of the text is discovered, and you have to publish it again. Incomplete knowledge of the contents of the Islamic manuscripts heritage is not the only flaw of our studies. The amazing number of Islamic manuscripts which I mentioned and the huge amount of modern editions should not distract us from this distressing observation. The number of items actually taken into account by modern scholarship is very limited in comparison with what has been preserved. Roughly speaking, modern scholarship has been focusing on texts which were deemed relevant to textual or historical research, or on manuscripts which were of interest for art history, for instance. It dismissed as not worth much trouble copies of works like the Dalail al-Khairat, which have been produced in very large numbers and in very often, well, not very nice looking versions. The same applies to the remark sometimes heard about the Timbuktu manuscripts, which are sometimes considered as recent and repetitive as far as the contents are concerned. I owe to some extent to this attitude my involvement in Islamic manuscripts studies. When I started, I was offered, well, I came as a fresh young scholar, French of course, to the Bibliothèque Nationale, and was given the opportunity to work on the Quranic manuscript collection, because my colleagues were convinced that this collection was not interesting. It was still the same text, the Quran, and there was nothing to glean from that. And it's only after a few days I mentioned my first contact with an Arabic manuscript. It was actually the first Quran in the collection of the Bibliothèque Nationale. I was absolutely fascinated by the possibilities offered by this manuscript, which were, of course, repetitive, but so diverse, so interesting, that, 30 years later, I'm still here speaking about Arabic and Islamic manuscripts. During the last few years, during the last few years, other schemes and projects developed in this field. Previously the focus was more on, let's say, edition of text than anything else. I shall mention a few of them. Of course, I will forget many of them, just as an illustration of the growing interest for Islamic manuscripts during the last quarter of the 20th century. I shall first mention groups and institutions like MELCOM, which have been instrumental in helping a wider audience to become aware of the importance of these manuscripts. MELCOM was not meant for manuscript, but many of the librarians who came to this meeting had some manuscripts in their care, and during these meetings there was always a session devoted to manuscripts, and very often it was the meeting place to speak about manuscript with other colleagues. The Al-Furqan Islamic Heritage Foundation, established in 1988, exemplifies the change of attitude which was a hallmark of the 80s, and it aimed at promoting a more careful and overall approach of manuscripts.
As to spend a few minutes with the inexperienced newcomers and share their...
has been active in the promotion of research and the diffusion of knowledge about Islamic manuscripts. When I started working in this field, the only way to learn about Islamic manuscripts was to look at the material itself and try to benefit from the knowledge of scholars with a long experience in this field who may have been kind and patient enough as to spend a few minutes with the inexperienced newcomer and share their wisdom with him. Over the years, along with the development of our studies, the training of young researchers interested in Islamic manuscripts has ceased to be a matter of contingent opportunities, and it is now sometimes possible to follow courses about the subject. Of course, in many places, students become familiar with the basics of codicology or with manuscript studies during courses of literature and art history, for example. Very few universities have a chair devoted to Islamic manuscript, but it is hoped that in the future this number will be more important. Fortunately, would-be codicologists, catalogers, or art historians can have access to workshops and training courses that have been steadily increasing in number and frequency over the years. Here again, Al-Furqan Foundation played a role in organizing such courses, and we had a reminder about this in Sheikh Yamani's talk. In order to give an idea of the possibilities, I shall mention 3 such courses which took place during the last 6 months. We are not speaking now of years, but the frequency is becoming quite elevated. There was one in Cambridge, I don't have the picture here, with Tima in last September. Then in November, December in Madrid in the Complutense University we had another training course, and the most recent was in Berlin, where the Staatsbibliothek organized a training course. So you see that anybody wishing to get some training, even if he's in a place where there is no specific course about it, can get a first experience at codicology. The longer tradition of scholarly text edition provides the students with more possibilities to get some methodological training during the course of their studies, but workshops devoted to text editing have also been organized in the past year, for instance, once again, by Al-Furqan. Scientific projects related with Islamic manuscripts are even more numerous than in the past. In addition to projects established on a national basis, which are very numerous, I shall mention the Quranica project, a French and German next one, project on the oldest manuscript of the Quran, exploring also the context of Islam in Arabia. There is the Timbuktu, next one, project on manuscripts, which is organized by the Cape University in South Africa, and looking at the collections in Timbuktu. There is, of course, the Shahnameh project, developed around a British core, if I may say so, but aims at a full coverage of the manuscripts of Firdausi's epics. And without mentioning, of course, the online database of Al-Furqan, which is in the process of being developed. To these projects, which are basically devoted to Islamic manuscript, we have also a wider interest with projects like COMST, Comparative Oriental Manuscript Studies, which focuses on the Oriental traditions and covers, let's say, Syriac, but also Coptic, Armenian traditions. And next one, devotes some of its efforts to codicology, of course, but also to cataloging this dying art, which actually needs some support. The same applies to the newly created Center for the Study of Manuscript Culture in Hamburg, which is promoting an encyclopedia of manuscript culture in Asia and Africa, where the various traditions can be compared. And this, of course, is very important because in many cases the light provided by the neighbor may help you understanding something. I could also mention exhibitions which during the last decades also have played a role in expanding the interest for manuscript, not only in scholarly circle, but also in a wider audience. It's actually, well, I admit that I took this as a kind of general tribute to the efforts we did in Islamic manuscripts research over the last decades. But it turns now that the experience accumulated in this field becomes a model for other manuscript studies. This happened, for example, with the Hamburg. I'm involved in this encyclopedia of Hamburg, and the corpus of information we have on Islamic manuscript is used by my colleagues working on Burmese or Nepali manuscript as a kind of reference of what should be looked at and not. So we can be proud of ourselves of having got some recognition, not only as far as Islamic manuscripts are concerned, but at a wider level. At the beginning of the 21st century, specialists of Islamic manuscript can indeed rely on a sizable amount of tools which will help them in their research. The survey, which was mentioned previously, initiated by Al-Furqan Foundation, was something completely new and resulted in the first overview of the field. It gave for the first time a comprehensive picture of the collections which were housing Islamic manuscript and a much needed presentation of the information available about them. Collecting and publishing data about manuscripts has been crucial for the development of codicology. In addition to the catalogues which sometimes contain useful information about the materials of the book, The fichier des manuscrits moyen-orientaux datés, the file of dated Middle Eastern manuscript, collected both information and images about the manuscript, thus providing, although it's limited in scope because we only published 350 manuscripts, thus providing the basis for a visual collection of data. It was actually at the root of the manual de codicology, which later, next one, was translated and published by Al-Furqan as the Islamic Codicology, an introduction to the study of manuscript in Arabic script, and its Arabic version, which you can see in the next row. More recently, Adam Gacek published this very useful vademecum for readers, which provides a wealth of information for any newcomer to the field of Islamic manuscripts. Journals and conferences are important. There is now a long tradition of journals, beginning in 1955 with the Journal of the Institute of Manuscripts, Arabic Manuscripts in Cairo, which is still publishing today, and was actually instrumental in promoting this kind of studies. We could mention Nameye Barestan, which is published in Iran and covers and shows the activity of our colleagues in Iran in publishing material studies about manuscript. In Europe, manuscripts of the Middle East was short-lived. It didn't last for many years, but was also an important forum for manuscript studies. And today we have the Journal of Islamic Manuscripts, which is carrying on this task. There will be new journals because, once again, the interest is growing. Some may be comparative journals, that is to say, devoted to more than Islamic manuscript, but we can have in this way new tools for research. I will not speak about the many conferences which were held during these last decades and have a last look at the backbone of our researches, that is to say, the catalogues. Catalogues have been published here in this house, but of course the amount of catalogues which are published over the years is far more important and of course provides a lot of information. Unfortunately, we are dealing with something which is very variable. We have cases where the descriptions are almost inexistent, with few data. Of course, it's important to know that you have a text with the name of the author, the number of the manuscript, the title of the work, and a few data, but in many instances, what we want to know is a little bit more than just what is equivalent to any printed book catalog. Manuscripts are not printed books. They are unique, and they need that this uniqueness should be taken into consideration. There are, fortunately, attempts to get more information, and I mentioned here this collection of manuscripts, which, and it's a shame, is taking the place of in many of the institutions, which today are shy of publishing manuscript because it's not fashionable. It's not. It's seen as a kind of boring literature which doesn't deserve much effort. And this collection will include the catalogue of the Persian manuscripts of the Bibliothèque Nationale, because the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris decided that they were not interested any longer in publishing catalogues. It seems silly, but so it is. And in this case, I will take the last published catalogue of this collection, the collection of the University in Turin, next one, with descriptions which, as you can see, include a wealth of information which can be used for other purposes than identifying the ubication of a text and the contents of the manuscript. This, of course, is something which will help us in researching more into detail the specificities of Islamic manuscripts. Internet, of course, will help, and we have now a lot of projects, of catalogs, which are available on internet. Some may be only PDF files of older catalogs, made available on internet, but as you see here, for example, with this tribute to Great Britain, that there will be a catalogue of the major libraries with Islamic manuscripts available in this way. Internet is not only the place for catalogues, it can also help developing new fields of research. One of the most interesting projects I know of is the recently launched Chester Beatty Library Seals database. Seals impressions are commonly found on manuscripts, but the catalogues only rarely mention them because their reading is difficult and you cannot always know who was the owner of the seal. In this project, you have a database with the pictures of the seal, which allow to know more about the individual history of the manuscript and will help us in identifying now lost collections, but we can, for example, find the same seal on various manuscripts and know that at some moment they were in the possession of someone or of an institution. One of the leading experts in Islamic manuscript, Professor Pitcam, also moderates a website called Islamic Manuscripts, which intends to provide a wide audience with basic information about this material. Well, this is not the past, it's still the present, but I will now turn to the future and try to see what new studies can be hopeful the next, this century. We are in the 21st century, after all, it's time to catch it. Research on Islamic manuscript during the last decade has resulted in a shift from an approach dominated by the interest for the texts to a concern for a broader spectrum of issues related to the manuscripts. The growing awareness of the importance of these documents as heritage may account for this change. A glance at the literature devoted to this field amply shows how things are quickly changing, and I hope that the quick presentation of the recent achievements I will offer here, partial as it may be, will be subjective of the will be suggestive of the actual intellectual activity underway. To sum up the situation, I would say that the current trend aims at looking at the manuscript in context, and I shall now show you how it can be done. I will begin quickly with codicological studies, to which I have devoted much time and energy. They underwent a dramatic change during the last decades. The study of the material components of the manuscript, often defined as an archaeology of the book, has provided philologists, art historians, or historians of the book with fresh insights into manuscript productions in the Islamic world. It proved essential for the preparation of accurate manuscript descriptions, and a cataloger should have a basic training in this field. Codicologists can only properly work with a series of documents, put the manuscripts in context, in perspective. Hence the importance of large corpora of data, which can help controlling the information. Although each manuscript is unique, since a copyist can only transcribe one at a time, the circumstances of the production at a given time and in a given place are somewhat similar to some extent. I shall not go into detail because it would be the matter of a whole conference, but I can only sketch out a few areas which seem promising. During the last decades, physico-chemical analysis became at the same time less harmful for the manuscripts and cheaper. It is actually possible to bring the measurement tools to the library or book repository, thus letting it in its normal environment. Typically, the methods will be non-destructive and will not require any sampling from the manuscript. In this way, the identification of the components of the inks or pigments used for illumination or in paintings is becoming more a routine procedure than an exceptional approach. Even in the case of C14 datings, which require the destruction of a sample of paper or parchment taken from the manuscript, the amount needed by the most recent techniques is reduced to the maximum. These analyses have strengthened the conclusions which paleographers or art historians had reached on other bases. Well, I made a mistake. Could you go ahead? One more. I feel. Yes, this one. I'm sorry, I mixed things. A manuscript in the Keiron collection is a nice example of the contribution of this analysis to our knowledge of the early period. It has been known as a copy which was presented to the Great Mosque of Keiron by the Zirid ruler Al-Mu'izz ibn Badis, who ruled, well, the date appears on the screen, who wrote on the first page of the manuscript a statement by which he cursed the Fatimids, thus breaking with his overlords and following a new course. Is it a Zirid copy of the Quran? Next one. The script and illumination, next one, seem to tell another story, as they could be related to various 9th century Abbasid manuscripts. In this case, the C14 analysis left no doubt that the Mus'haf of Al-Mu'izz was an Abbasid manuscript. It was produced in the 9th century and for some reason was used again by the Zirid ruler in 11th century Ifriqiya. Paleography remains, because I tend to consider paleography as part of codicology, paleography remains the poor relative of manuscript studies. In contradistinction to modern Western manuscript studies, which actually started with paleography in the 17th century, Islamic manuscripts cannot rely on a similar expertise, probably because inter alia, the script of most manuscripts is perfectly legible for someone who knows Arabic. This field lags behind, and my proposal to put it at the core of some project produced little results so far. One can argue that the lack of published documentation weighs heavily against the development of paleography. The sheer number of manuscripts acts probably as a deterrent against studies in this field. When you are dealing with 3 billion manuscripts, you just cannot know where to begin with. In addition, the calligraphic tradition, with its well-constituted body of knowledge, provides the deceiving impression that both the typology and the history of the Arabic script is perfectly well known. And it's not the case. In spite of some progress, the basic tools are still insufficient. The number of albums with pictures of dated specimens is quite insufficient when compared once again with the quantity and diversity of the Islamic manuscripts production. The need for more expertise in this field is obvious, with many copies being without date and the vast majority without indication of the place of copy. Both elements are often quite relevant for those who are working, for example, on textual editions, who would need to know when and where a given copy was transcribed. I should now go back to to this one. The contribution of manuscript to our knowledge of Islamic art should not be neglected. The first centuries of Islam are a case in point. Until recently, specialists cautiously used the epithet Abbasid when dealing with scripts and illuminations found on an oblong format parchment manuscript. There was, however, a very strong reluctance from some art historians to admit that earlier copies could have survived at all. The discovery of the manuscript, which had been hoarded in the roof of the Great Mosque in Sana'a in the 70s, gave a new dimension to our knowledge of Umayyad art. The famous opening pages of the Quranic manuscripts of Sana'a, published by Hans Caspar von Bothmer, as well as the script or the illuminations of the manuscript, changed our perception and opened the way to a revelation of other manuscripts or fragments which could also be attributed to the Umayyad period. In this case again, C14 analysis of the parchment confirmed the attribution to the Umayyad period. The illumination was consonant also with the mosaics of the Dome of the Rock. Next one. Or of the Great Mosque of Damascus. Next one. Or also with mosaics from churches from Jordan, recently excavated in the second half of the 20th century. These results completely altered the vision of Umayyad art because a new chapter was opened at that time. Art historians have been from the 19th century onwards very active in the field of Islamic manuscript studies. Islamic painting and the art of the book feature prominently among the bibliography related to Islamic manuscript studies. However, illumination, that is to say the non-figurative decoration found in manuscript as a whole, is a still understudied chapter of Islamic art. From a codicological point of view, much has to be expected from such researchers on illumination, which could provide new elements for the identification of the place of origin and the date of a manuscript. Jean Genet's inspired comments on the elements which both materially and immaterially surround the text, which he called paratext, can also be put to fruition in the case of Islamic manuscripts. As an example, title pages have almost completely escaped the attention of research, with the exception of some comments about the structure and composition of the book titles themselves. They are so obviously located in the most visible place of the book at the beginning that we tend to forget that they are by no means something intrinsic to the book. Some early examples from Quémont date back to the 9th century. Through the ages, the composition of these pages vary, and the examples range from the most simple, as this one, to the highly sophisticated, like this other, or next example from the Maghreb, or with illumination here. Interestingly enough, the Quranic manuscripts are an exception in this field. No title page has been identified to this day, but the most sophisticated copies may have followed a specific solution, integrating, next one, in the illumination, textual components which amount to a title. They are Quranic quotations which always include the word Quran, the most common being, as in this case, the verses 77 to 80 of Surah Al-Waqi'ah, which can be distributed in various ways on the illuminated double page. In some cases, the quotation takes a partisan tone, as is the case in a copy transcribed in Palermo in the 10th century, which opens with a double page containing an anti-Mutazila statement. Yes, this one. The history of the book is certainly one of the most promising fields for Islamic manuscript studies. The sheer number of manuscripts which I mentioned at the beginning of this talk demonstrates, if needed, the importance of the book in traditional Islamic societies at large. Many approaches could be mentioned. Anthropology, study about the economy of the book. We have no idea about the prices of the books.
of the circuits by which books were exchanged from one part of the Islamic world to another one. And this brings us to the borders between book history and history. For historical reasons, the Islamic world does not have a long tradition of archives, or only in special cases or in certain periods. However, manuscripts contain sometimes documents which may have an historical importance. Among the very few documents from Abbasid times which have come down to us, one can mention the Waqfiyah of the Quranic manuscript from that period. Some of these deeds are actually linked with officials which held high position within the empire, like Amajro, who was governor of Damascus by the middle of the 9th century, or the enigmatic Abul Mansur al-Fath ibn Muha, who is quite probably the famous Musa ibn Muha, who played a major role in the late Samara period. In at least one case, one of these high Abbasid officials presented a copy to the Umayyad mosque in Damascus at a time when the city was under Tulunid control, thus raising the question of the purpose of such gifts. It was not part of the area which was under Abbasid control, so this means that the book was sent in the name of someone who was, let's say, high, in this case, high commander of the army, to Damascus at a time when the Tulunese were holding Damascus. Another example will help me stressing 2 points. When looking at Derambour's catalogue of the Escorial collection, published in 1884, there is only a slight hint in the description of the last text in this point, this line, which may lead the reader to think that there is more to say about this manuscript. The author states that thus was completed in 970 of the Hijra this collection of works which were purposely collected in one volume. The list of the titles seem, on the other hand, rather unpromising. All are well represented in the Islamic manuscript tradition and can hardly yield much results as far as the texts themselves are concerned, and this may explain why the manuscript did not draw much attention. We find a copy of the Burda, then tracts by As-Sanusi, among them is Aqidah al-Kubra, the Risala by Al-Kairawani, a part of the Alfiya and the Ajurumiyya, and the third part of the Talkhis al-Miftah of Al-Qazwini, for instance. All these texts are known by various copies. The Alfiya is a grammar, the Ajurumiyya also. They are textbook for school. In other words, the manuscript contains basic texts. When one looks at the manuscripts, things start to change. From the outside, it is clear that some special care has been taken of this book. The title found on the edge is obviously more elaborate than what one usually encounters in this place. When opening the book, new elements catch the eye. For example, there is a table of contents which is very precise, next one, and the illumination marking the beginning of the first text, the Burda, shows that the copy was meant for a wealthy patron. The script itself, as you can notice, is quite careful. A note found at the beginning of the book gives more clues about the origins of the manuscript. It is an ijaza given shortly after the manuscript was completed, thus suggesting that the man was a patron who ordered the copy, a young Saadian prince who was to be killed a few years later by order of his uncle, the ruling Sultan of Morocco. There is more. A contemporary chronicle provides us with the syllabus of the education of the Sultan to be Ahmad al-Mansur, who reigned over Morocco from 1578 to 1603. It tallies almost perfectly with the contents of the Majmua, which turns to be a unique witness about princely education and culture in 16th century Morocco, with the information provided, which the information provided by Delambourg did not lead us to expect. The manuscript describes the text, but gives no idea of the cultural and historical importance of the document. The manuscript and its rather dull contents remind us that the current situation is in the end not very different from that prevailing in the field of Western printed book studies by the middle of the last century, when scholars like Henri-Jean Martin started the groundbreaking studies which led to the development of book history. Up to that date, and it's somewhat similar to what happened in the field of Islamic manuscripts research. Research has been dominated by a bibliophilic which only took into account a tiny percentage of book production in modern times. The change was to take a complete view and to put once again things into context. Such an approach will provide answers to questions which seem essential for our understanding of Islamic civilization. In our current state of knowledge, we are, for instance, totally unable to say which were the best sellers at a given moment. Of course, we can suspect that the Quran or some Hadith collections were transcribed on a regular basis, but what other texts were popular in Egypt during the 15th century, for instance, or in Morocco during the 17th, or in India in the 18th century? We have no idea about these points. These new research avenues suppose more accurate information about the manuscript. In other words, in a first step, better catalogues. This is absolutely fundamental. The new studies which will be made possible thanks to the information thus collected will in turn serve as a basis for a more in-depth knowledge of the Islamic manuscript and of the Islamic civilization. The edition of texts will also benefit from a better exploration of the collections of Islamic manuscripts, either through a more accurate description of the contents or because the publication of catalogues of yet undescribed collections will bring to the attention of the scholarly world texts awaiting publication or better copies which will require to prepare a new edition of a text. As is the case for Western texts, a reflection is, however, needed about the way in which texts are edited. The philological tradition has built a model of text transmission which in turn leads to the classical approach, leading to the establishment of the correct text and the stemma, so to say, the genealogical tree of the manuscript transmission. Many years ago, Jan Just Wittkamp already drew the attention on the problems he encountered while preparing the edition of Al-Furqān Encyclopedia of Sciences. Similar remarks were voiced by Wilfred Madlung in the initial conference of Al-Furqan Foundation. And I have noted by myself a tendency during the last years to favor the publication of texts which are only known through a unique witness, probably as a reaction to the difficult task of scientific edition under a specific transmission of text which has to be thought about. This is certainly a more difficult undertaking as it involves, in the end, reconsidering the notion of text itself. Of making books, there is no end. So was the title of a paper by Franz Rosenthal in a conference many years ago, a quotation from the Bible. And of studying text and manuscript, there is also no end. Much has been done, but so much remains to be done.
Maybe you could first a bit, Professor.
No, I'm sorry.
I would like actually to thank very much Professor Déroche for this very insightful, very informative and enlightening lecture, really. All this amount of information on many things which maybe I I'm sure he didn't have enough time to go through them. That's why actually we left a space of 15 minutes for discussion and questions, and hopefully we'll keep within the time, and I hope the professor will have the patience to answer to those questions based. So please, if anyone has got, please a remote mic, please. So here, yeah, here please.
Well, I think I don't need a microphone then. Thank you very much for this very interesting lecture. About C14 carbon dating. I was under the impression that the level of sophistication or the narrowing of the band of the dates was not really useful for manuscripts. I mean, from your lecture, obviously, I learned that that is not the case. I think there might be a feedback, no?
It's fine.
Oh, okay. So that this might not be the case. Could you just say maybe a few words about the progress that has been made in carbon dating and whether it's really, I mean, you gave 2 examples where it was a useful technique in order to determine the age of a manuscript. Is this something that you think should be done on a larger scale?
Well, of course, carbon dating is providing a range of dates, of possible dates, and sometimes the importance between the early and late dates is too important to be really interesting. But in some cases, it may provide an answer, and if you do that series of measurements, then the various items will probably constitute a row of dates. Of course, the precise date of any of them is not known, but you will know, for example, that this manuscript is older than this one and that one and that one. What is lacking for the moment, and it's one of my worries about this technique, is actually that the measurements are performed in a very precise way. I actually made a kind of a trick to 2 labs. I sent the same parchment to 2 labs without saying that it's not very fair, but it was just to check before starting how things were done. And the result came almost identical in the 2 cases. So the techniques of measurements are very, very good. What is probably the problem is that the measurements need to be translated into real date, because the theory is that the C14 is evaporating, if I may say so, according to a regular curve. In the way in which the C14 is eliminated from the organic components is varying like that. And so there are equations, I don't know how to, which change from time to time, and with the growing amount of such measurements tend to be more precise. For the moment, the problem with Islamic manuscripts is that these measurements tend to be too old. We did a measurement on an early Quran, and it provided a date of 575. So, well, it's you see, it's maybe, I have been told by the specialists that animals fed in arid areas tend to accumulate the C14 in a different way. But there is, yes, well, it's so it's there's little knowledge. Much of the work has been done for the areas. For, let's say, the southern shore or the Mediterranean, we lack a very important body of evidence which would lead to better readings.
But you're confident, if I can just follow up on this, because you seem to be confident that you can narrow it down, let's say, to a century at least.
A century, it's already the case. In many instances, it's even 50 years.
50 years.
Thanks a lot. The next one, please, the gentleman.
I've got 2 questions. Did Queen Isabella and Ferdinand have a policy of burning Arabic manuscripts? Because there seems to be a fantastic cut-off. Suddenly, all Islamic heritage stops.
Well, there is a famous history about the burning of manuscript in Granada after the city was taken over. Well, I think that there is a good quantity of information available in libraries of manuscript transcribed in Spain prior to Islam. The problem is that the catalogs, for example, de Lambourg's catalog of the Escorial, is just not giving the information. I was speaking recently with a colleague who is working on the production of manuscripts in Al-Andalus, and he told me as something self-obvious that there was no Andalusi manuscript in El Escorial, and I told him, well, look, last week I had in my hands a copy with the colophon stating that it was transcribed in Minorca, and another one in Sevilla. But of course, it's not written in the catalogs. You have to go to the library and sift through the collection. The information is there. Once again, it's a matter of catalogs. If you have good catalogs with indices which provide you the information about the places where the manuscripts were transcribed, you gain a lot of time. But of course, it doesn't answer completely your question on this affair of the burning of manuscript. Well, it's quite possible, but we know, unfortunately, I was speaking about the kamikaze found on the manuscript. Apparently, it's working with pests. With humans, apparently, it's not so easy, and they tend to destroy more manuscripts than the insects.
My second question is, with your cataloguing, are you going to be able to press a button and bring up all the medical manuscripts, all the Pythagoras manuscripts, all the Aristotle manuscripts? Does it separate these things out for scholars?
Well, then of course this is a matter of you can proceed on a thematical way. There is, for example, a very good catalogs by Ramazan Shechen of the medical manuscript of Turkey. So you have to go to libraries and identify the manuscripts which are relevant to you. Or what is usually done, because it's more convenient, is to concentrate on the library and take the manuscript from number 1 to number X and have the descriptions. And then, of course, it will be the reader's task to go through the list of text and look what is medical and what is rhetorics or what else.
Thanks a lot. Just before I move to the next question, actually mentioning Professor Déroche, the library, I would like actually to invite all of you to use our reference library in Al-Furqan, which holds for the moment around 15,000 volumes. We call it a rare library since it holds the whole, mostly the main manuscripts catalogs from over 74 countries. So welcome anytime, and hopefully soon that will be, part of it, and including our catalogs, will be in the online database, which Mr. Chef already announced it before, hopefully. The next question is Dr. Valley, I think, yeah, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, François, really wide-ranging and suggestive lecture. Just going back to the future for a moment, so to speak. Some of the things that you described, like the fichier, the FIMOD, and the manual, these were products of cooperation, close cooperation on the international kind of level. It seems to me that why we have these organizations that have developed, but actual cooperation on projects, research projects, the kind of thing that really casts light on the social history of the manuscript, that kind of thing you were talking about, which interests me also so much, that doesn't seem to be there at the moment. I wonder what you think about means of perhaps encouraging people to work together, or to get your research students in that direction of ferreting through these catalogues and other sources to find out more. I could give you concrete examples of sort of things I mean, but I think you know what I mean.
Yes, well, of course, you're right. It's a collective work, because if only by using the results of cataloging you are in the end working with other people who have been working with you. Well, it's quite infrequent that someone go to a library and works there for the first time and publish the material. In the end, we are all also specialists of some part of the heritage. I mean, I'm interested in codicology, and I must admit that textual studies are not my my main field of investigation. So, but on the other hand, I know perfectly that I cannot work without having some exchange with a colleague who will be an expert on text transmission. So I agree completely with you that any future development of research will be by a collective effort. And I hope that I was clear precisely to say that the body of knowledge we now have at hand in this field is the result of multiple contribution to these studies.
Because I would have liked to have thought of Wimbledon, for example, as a beginning and not as an end.
No,
now the technical means are so much more easily available.
I hope to revive it, because of course it cannot stop after 350. It's not the end of the subject. We have to go ahead.
Thank you. The next question, Professor Ravi.
Did you see Manuscript Manchester Beatty Library in Dublin? They are very well preserved.
Yes, well, I've been working in the Chester Beatty Library, and of course it's a very nice library with a lot of things to be discovered. Actually it's something which, well, I may look a little bit too passionate. I don't know if it's the right word in English, but it's true that it's a field where you never, you always discover new things. It's really fascinating to open a manuscript and find something, not every day, but so often that it keeps you with the wish to go ahead.
Thank you. Two more questions actually, just for the sake of the time, please.
Yeah, I got two questions here. The first thing is, how often do you come across rare manuscripts which would solve some problems, like what some English writers said, the predictions of Nostradamus are just lost context of an Arab manuscript, for example? This is the first question. Second question, do you think that there are some books who are still in their package, which means, for example, the British Library or the what you call Librairie Nationale de Paris, we hold some books there which are we don't have access to those books.
Okay, I think the idea is clear.
On the first one, every day I find rare books, because every manuscript is unique. So you can take it from various ways. It may be unique for the text it contains. It may be unique by the quality of the text transmitted. It may be unique by the illumination, by the fact that it was, for example, you perhaps noted that some of the slides were showing a mark by Moroccan Sultan. The ownership may be something unique. I have, it's always very fascinating that some manuscript has something to bring to you, some information of any kind. Of course, you can, it will, in the end, it will depend of your own interest on this point. For the second point, I am no longer a librarian. I've been working for years, not so many, in the Bibliothèque Nationale, and I had at that time an insider's view of what was in the Bibliothèque Nationale, and at that moment, no, I would say that even the most recently acquired manuscript were described by hand in a book and made available to scholars or readers who were interested. So for other libraries, frankly, I cannot say. I didn't come across cases of manuscripts which were ordered in a shelf without access.
Thanks a lot. Actually, Professor Azawi, the first and the last question with Yasmin, please.
I can speak loudly if I may. Have you been involved at all with the possibility of rescuing some of the manuscripts which were actually burnt in Iraq during or after the 2003 invasion, which France was very wisely not to actually support that invasion?
Well, I know that there was some effort because I gave a kind of training course to Iraqi librarians. So there was a program of exchange with the National Library of Baghdad, and yes, so they came. Well, this is the end of my involvement. I provided them with some basic tools for the description of manuscript, how to look at the materials. Well, then. Of course, I cannot say if it was used later to sell manuscript, but restoration is not my field, so I cannot speak confidently about the subject.
So, Yasmin, the gentleman behind you first. I think you got the question. Then the last one, Yasmin, please.
The microphone. With regard to the economy of manuscripts, you mentioned that we know close to nothing about the price, manuscript prices. I got the impression that there's a lot on manuscript prices, there's a lot of information on prices, both in manuscripts themselves and in the historical and biographical sources. So could you comment please on the state of knowledge?
Well, of course, if we start with the textual evidence, there is some information, but I'm not so confident about the way in which it can be used. We all know the history of, I don't know, well, a calligrapher or an author was paid the equivalent in gold of the sheets, they would put on the scale the book and put gold on the other. So well, this. Frankly, I'm very skeptical about this kind of information. Well, the message is that the work was important, and so it was a way of saying that. As far as prices are concerned, of course, I collected some information. We have a lot of information from the western side. For example, in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, some of the books bought in Egypt even in the 17th century have a price saying that it was paid for this so many. The problem in that case is that we know by other sources that since the books were not paid directly to the owner but through an intermediary, there was some possibility that there were some bargaining and an extra charge for. So these prices should be looked at, and I've been trying to look at. But of course, what is lacking in this case is the corresponding information for a local buyer of books. There are some prices found on manuscript which are by an Oriental hands. Some Egyptian owner who said that he had bought this book. So we slowly, little by little, collecting this information, we may go further. But of course, once again, it's a matter of cataloging. This kind of notes should be in the description of a manuscript, because if the cataloger doesn't say that he found the indication of the price of the manuscript, nobody will know that, and it's lost until someone goes to the library and looks at the manuscript. Once again, I take my example with the Dérambourg. There are some information about prices in the Escorial collection, but in the catalogue you will not find it because Dérambourg was not interested in this kind of stuff. And I turn again to my initial mention. We are now interested in some subjects, and the economy of the book is one of them. But we should think, when describing manuscript, that people later may be interested in something else, and they should also think of their own their possible interests.
Thanks. And the last question, actually, Yasmin.
No, I just had a comment to make regarding to Mohammed Isa's question, also what you mentioned, and the whole cataloguing as such. I think that what is really important to drive this forward is that scholars and librarians work together. This is a rather new phenomenon in a way, because now we have the media and we have the interactive means to actually do that. And in the end, it's impossible to do it in any other way. We used to have scholars who were cataloguing whole collections of manuscripts and made many mistakes because they were not experts in the field and they couldn't possibly study all the texts as texts. They could concentrate on a certain aspect. Whereas now we have these opportunities through digitization or even through digital catalogs. Like the catalog we worked on that was shown, the Ferris, is a very minimal, contains very minimal information, but there is the option to increase the information and to send your to us. And we can very easily update that, but I mean, this is just an example. But I think in general, these fields, these forces have to work together. Academics have to feel more responsible to add to this knowledge and work with librarians, and I think this is the only way we can progress.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. A good point, actually, to sum up with. I'll have to apologize, actually, for the rest of the questions. I know that there is a huge interest. Allow me, in the name of all the audience here, to thank you very much, Professor Déroche, for this very insightful and informative and enlightening, actual lecture, for this such comprehensive approach. Thanks a lot for being with us tonight.
Thank you to you for the invitation.
To sum up at the end, thank you. Sum up tonight's event. You. I think the word cooperation tonight was mentioned so many times, and as a sign of that starting of cooperation, Al-Furqan actually is open for such cooperations. Hopefully, has been all the time and will be from now on in the future. This tonight's event shows one step into that direction. Hopefully, we started with some exchange of gifts. Just before I sum up, I would like actually to, since the title of the approach which Mr. Sharaf had was the Al-Furqan from the World Survey to the online database of Islamic manuscripts, I would like to Mr. Sharaf to hand over the gift of the World Survey, the English edition, to Professor Salim Al-Hassani as a sign for beginning of such cooperation, and hopefully there will be much more in the future. I think maybe the whole bag as well. It's a 4-volume one. Thank you very much.
I'm really very humbled to be here. It was almost 10 years ago when I came to a conference organized by Al-Furqan. And it was in those days we were wondering what we're going to be doing about the public out there who don't seem to know about the treasures of various civilizations, particularly about science and so on. And it was a day about Thabit bin Qurra, I think. I don't know whether any of you have been on those. Oh, great. And so I stood up and gave a few slides of what I have been collecting about some of the results of manuscripts in mechanical engineering and some gadgets and so on, which could be made into a very exciting story for kids and so on. And one of the ladies who was working in Al-Furqan, she stood up and she was really resonating and said, this is what we want to do. We want to get the young generation to be interested in this kind of knowledge and so on. So that was actually the beginning of our journey. It was started from Al-Furqan. I like on this particular occasion, first to thank you for the praise, and really I'm very humbled by that. What I want to say is that a very interesting, most dear sentence to my heart, and that was the one that everybody knows, that Isaac Newton has said, that he said, if I have seen further, it was because I stood on the shoulders of giants. It is really the standing on the shoulders of each other, particularly in terms of knowledge transfer and the building up of the human civilization. On this occasion, we have many scholars sitting here, and that is really, these are the giants on whose shoulders we stand. Today, earlier in the afternoon, we had a small get-together. We had the pleasure of Professor Peter Portman, who is now being snatched from Oxford and came to my city in Manchester, and he has given us a very in-depth analysis of the work of Ibn Sarabion, for instance. And of course, the work of Professor François that you've seen. It really is very exciting about what's happening out there. Films are being produced, there are popular books are being produced by various people. There are plays now that are being introduced in all sorts of levels in schools and so on. The whole thing is that it's going to make the future generation respect each other and to appreciate the contributions of various nations. No one nation can be singled out as being the only one or the only culture that has produced the present-day civilization. On this note, I'd like to thank the Al-Furqān Foundation. Of course, when you mention the Al-Furqān Foundation, you cannot but remember and mention Sheikh Ahmed Zaki Yamani, who is really the patron, the founder. Now, of course, we know that he's not well, and I'd like to send him through his great son, who very much looks like him. I remember many years ago when I looked at Sheikh, and it's a really striking similarity. So, whilst we are congratulating Sharaf for his newborn, we would like also to congratulate Sheikh Ahmed Zaki Yamani himself, sending him good wishes from this meeting, and to hope that this function will be the beginning of a long chain of functions so that we can all meet again here. And thank you for the work that you're doing. You're doing an excellent job. Such work is never enough, but I know that there is a particular unique way of the work of Al-Furqan, because I've been trying to look at various other cataloguing. The catalogue of Al-Furqan, which has not quite been mentioned in here, and that is the form, the amount of detail you give on each manuscript is very, very important for lay people like myself to know. When I look at a manuscript, I want to know what is inside it, because as you know, you get a title, of a manuscript, the name of a book, but inside it you can have all sorts of things, from mathematics to medicine to even tafsir of Quran, So, and to know what's inside each manuscript is the key for how the quality of cataloging. And I think Al-Furqan has got a fantastic card that is very, very, very good, and it's superior over other catalogs. So thank you very much again, and hope to see you next time.
Thanks a lot, Professor Salim. Just to sum up in 1 minute, and I think we'll all dispatch actually. I mean, regardless of the disagreement, what is the number of Islamic manuscripts throughout the world? I mean, we receive many figures from 3 to 5 million. There's one single truth that almost the wide range of these manuscripts are uncatalogued, unknown. I mean, we went to many libraries like Suleimani, and you just find piled there, and maybe in danger of being destroyed even or stolen. So there's a huge and great deal for cooperation and for working in this sphere. Secondly, from this 3 to 5 million, whichever the real number is, it is said that only 40 to 50,000 manuscripts have been really edited. So there's huge deal of amount to be worked in this, especially in the field of sciences and so on. So really that's a call for all of us to gather our hands together and just walk together in this huge way which is in front of us. Only by such works, by such gatherings, we would really send a message over to the new generations that there is a hidden treasure, and this treasure should be really shed the light into that. And very finally, just a few days ago, I received by Dr. Valley actually a letter was circulated nowadays for an appeal really for the ancient manuscripts of Timbuktu, because of the unrest situation now. A huge amount of manuscripts, even Professor Déroche mentioned, are endangered now because of the unrest and the situation. So there are many other places as well which such manuscripts are laying and waiting for experts, and maybe that message which was given by Yasmin as well, that kind of cooperation between the academics would be interesting. Anyhow, I would like at the very end actually to thank you all again for having you tonight. It has been a great pleasure to have you all here, and looking forward to the next activity which will gather us together again. Thank you very much, and